I'll never forget that Thanksgiving. The smell of roasted turkey filled my apartment. Even though I wasn't the one hosting dinner that year, I'd made a batch of pecan bars, my grandmother's old recipe, and wrapped them carefully, placing them on the passenger seat beside a tiny onesie folded with care. It read, "Future Big Cousin." I had picked it out weeks ago for my nephew Leo. He was only 7 months old, but I wanted him to be part of the moment, our moment. The one I had been waiting for my entire life, because for the first time, I had news. Real, joyful, life-changing news. I was pregnant, 36, single and pregnant. I had spent years thinking motherhood might pass me by. I buried myself in work. I took long walks alone. I listened to other women talk about their families, smiling politely while my heart sank a little more each time. But this time was different. I'd made a choice on my own. I'd saved, I'd planned, I'd met with doctors, and now, there she was, quietly growing inside me. I remember gripping the steering wheel that day, my heart pounding louder than the car's heater. I wasn't scared, not of being a mom. I was scared of not being seen, because I've always been the invisible one. My younger brother, Daniel, has always been the golden boy. And his wife, Emma, well, let's just say my mother thinks she walks on water. Emma, with her shiny hair, her Pinterest-perfect kitchen, her loud, sparkly laugh. Don't get me wrong, Emma can be charming, but she has a way of turning every room into her stage. And my mother, she claps the loudest. I arrived at their house around 4 o'clock. The sun was dipping low, casting soft shadows across the lawn. Inside, laughter spilled from the kitchen. Emma greeted me with air kisses and a wine glass, already half full. I smiled, I nodded, and I slipped away quietly to find Leo. He was in the nursery, cooing at a stuffed elephant. I scooped him up, kissed his forehead, and pulled the onesie over his soft little head. He giggled as I whispered, "You're going to be someone's cousin, little guy." Then I wrapped his tiny body in a sweater to keep the surprise tucked away. At least for a few more minutes, back in the dining room, conversation bubbled. Someone poured cider. Someone complained about politics. My mother was bragging about Emma's recent charity bake sale. I waited. Then, right as the cornbread hit the table, Leo on his own tugged at his sweater and pulled it off. He banged on the tray of his high chair, babbling happily, and the room fell silent. It was Emma who spoke first. "Oh my God," she squealed. "Leo's going to be a big cousin." I opened my mouth to speak, but someone else cut in. "Emma, are you pregnant?" Laughter, screams, clapping. Emma, placed one hand over her flat stomach and smiled. Well, I guess the secret's out. My world slowed. I looked at her. I looked at Leo. And then I looked at my mother, who was now crying and hugging Emma like she'd just handed her a miracle. "Mom, I tried." Voice catching. "It's not Margaret," she snapped, turning sharply. "Don't be rude. Say congratulations. Rude, rude." For trying to share my joy, I stood there, blinking, breath stuck in my chest. No one heard me. No one looked at me. No one cared. Daniel stood in stunned silence, staring at his wife. "Are you serious?" he whispered to her. Emma just giggled, brushing him off. "We'll talk later," she said. I picked up my purse, heart burning, and I left. The pecan bars stayed on the table. So did the onesie. When I got home, I cried into my coat. Not because Emma stole the moment, though she did. Not even because my mother chose her side so quickly, though she always has. I cried because I had been brave. I had stepped forward with love in my hands. And they threw it back at me like it meant nothing. And in that moment, in the stillness of my small apartment, I felt something shift. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was angry, and I was going to protect this baby with everything I had. 3 days passed. Not a single call. Not from my mother. Not from Daniel. Certainly not from Emma. But the text came. Oh, they came. "You didn't have to make it about you. It was just a little mix-up. Emma didn't mean anything by it. Honestly, Margaret, You should have been clearer. Clearer I'd brought a baby onesie. I dressed Leo myself. I stood there ready to share the biggest moment of my life and somehow I was the one being scolded by the time Daniel texted. It was nearly midnight, a single message. I had no idea what Emma was doing. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. What could I say? That his wife had pretended to be pregnant to steal my moment, that my mother believed her without a second thought, that I felt more alone than I had in years. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. A group message. From Emma. It was long. So carefully worded. You could almost hear her fake sincerity dripping through the screen. She said she was deeply sorry for the confusion. She said the reveal idea, the onesie. The timing was something she had always dreamed of doing if she ever had a child. She said that seeing Leo in that shirt made her feel something she'd never felt before. I know I've always said I wouldn't have children. She wrote, but in that moment, I just wanted to experience the magic, just once. She ended with, let's do a redo dinner so you can announce it properly. I promise we'll all act surprised. I stared at the message, read it again and again. Act surprised. Like this was a school play. My baby was not a do-over. She wasn't a performance. She wasn't a consolation prize. And the people around me, my family, weren't acting like they cared about her. They cared about managing appearances, about smoothing it all over. So I said no. Just one word. No. The backlash came quickly. You're being difficult. Don't let pride get in the way of healing. She's trying to apologize. Was she? Because to me, that didn't look like an apology. It looked like control. She had taken my moment. She wore it like a borrowed dress and twirled in it until the light faded. And when I walked away, I became the problem. A week later, Daniel showed up at my door with a duffel bag. He looked exhausted, pale, quiet. Can I stay here for a few days, he asked. I didn't even question it. Of course he could. He barely spoke for the first night. Just sat on the couch, flipping through TV channels without really watching. On the second night, he said, she told me it was a joke that went too far. I didn't respond because it wasn't a joke. It was humiliation dressed up in pink lipstick. She says you're being too sensitive, he continued, but I don't know anymore. I don't know who she is lately. He looked lost, really lost. I think I want kids, he added quietly. I didn't before, but something shifted. I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. Sometimes, when someone steals something sacred from you, it opens up a space in them they didn't know was empty. Daniel stayed 3 nights, then went back home, back to her. Before he left, I told him this. She has crossed every line with me. Daniel, and if you stay silent, you're standing on her side of the line. He nodded, eyes sad, mouth shut. I went low contact after that. I stopped answering group texts. I stopped sending updates about the pregnancy. I even made a separate baby registry, private, invite only. The silence was my shelter, and inside it, I began to feel peace, real peace. I spoke softly to my daughter at night. I read her children's books aloud while she kicked. I built a world where she'd be wanted from day one, not because of how it looked, but because of how deeply she was loved. And then came the email. Subject line Emma's gender reveal. Zoom invite 4 months after she faked being pregnant at my reveal. Emma was now pregnant, for real. I stared at the Zoom invitation for a long time. It was all pink and blue with glittery letters, Baby Ellis is on the way. Emma had included a dress code, wear pink or blue, depending on what you thought the baby would be. No mention of me, no acknowledgement of what had happened 4 months earlier. Just an expectation that I'd smile, participate, and pretend none of it ever hurt. And maybe part of me still hoped, still wanted to be the supportive sister, still wanted to be seen as family. So I joined the call. I wore pink, not for Emma, but because it was the only maternity dress that still fit me comfortably at 7 months pregnant. When I logged on, I saw them all. My mother, dressed head to toe in blue, grinning from ear to ear. My father beside her, silent but present, Daniel in a blue polo shirt, hand on Emma's shoulder, and Emma in pink, smiling, glowing, holding a massive black balloon above her head. The moment came, she popped the balloon. Blue confetti rained down like a storm. My mother burst into tears. Our first grandson, she cried. He's going to carry on the Ellis name. I smiled quietly. I clapped politely, and then, gently, I said, "Congratulations on your little boy. His cousin can't wait to meet him." I meant it, but Emma's face twisted the moment I spoke. "You always have to bring up your baby," she snapped. "Can't I have one day without you hijacking it?" I blinked. "Hijacking, I just congratulated you," I said softly. Emma crossed her arms. "So what are you having?" "Margaret, since you're so eager to talk about it, is it a girl? Must be since you're dressed in pink." The silence was sharp. My mother said nothing. Daniel said nothing. I said nothing. Just clicked the little red button and exited the call. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a group message, it was a private one. From Emma. Just one sentence. "You're such a bitter, jealous woman." I didn't reply. I couldn't, because I had nothing left to say. 2 weeks later, I found out Emma had logged into my Amazon account. She had gone through my private wish lists, things I'd marked for my baby registry. She had found out that I was having a girl. She told the entire family before I could. I had given Daniel access to my Prime account months ago so he could stream a documentary. I never thought she'd use that to dig through my private lists. But she did. And when I confronted her, she laughed. "I mean, it's not like you were going to tell anyone." She shrugged. "I just helped speed things along." Help? That wasn't help. That was theft. But it didn't stop there. Now that she knew I was having a girl, she started sending me lists of baby names she was calling dibs on. 4 or 5 every day. Most of them were names I would never pick trendy, shallow, performative. But one day, she sent the name. My name, the name I had chosen since I was a teenager, the name of my great-grandmother, a woman who had once crossed the country alone during the Great Depression just to find work and send money home. That name belonged to strength, to legacy, and now Emma was trying to claim it. I told her, firmly, that the name was already chosen. She laughed. Whatever. Names aren't copyrighted. I didn't respond, but I made a decision that night. I wasn't going to tell anyone the name until my daughter was born. Not a soul, not my parents, not even Daniel. I wrote it nowhere. I said it only to myself and to the baby, late at night, when the world was quiet and she was pressing gently against the inside of my skin. It was ours, and no one was going to take it. But Emma didn't stop. She started calling my daughter Jilly on social media. It wasn't her real name. It wasn't even close. It was a made-up nickname, something silly, something meaningless. But the worst part? The rest of the family started using it too. A week after I came home from the hospital, they came to visit. Emma brought a teddy bear. Embroidered across its chest, in bold pink thread, was the word Gilly. The room fell quiet when I opened the box. A small gasp came from my mother. Emma beamed. "A little welcome gift," she said sweetly. "Isn't it precious?" Inside the box was a plush teddy bear, soft and pale pink, and stitched right across its belly in bright bubblegum thread was the name Gilly. Not my daughter's name. Not even close. I held the bear for a second, stared at it, then looked around the room. My mother was chuckling. My father shifted in his seat. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. No one said a word, so I stood up, walked slowly to the kitchen, opened the lid of the trash can, and dropped the bear inside. The silence cracked. "Margaret," my mother hissed. "What on earth are you doing?" I turned back, calm but firm. "That is not her name," I said. "And I will not pretend otherwise just to keep everyone comfortable." Emma rolled her eyes. "It's just a nickname. You're overreacting." My hands were trembling. Not from fear, from rage I'd buried for far too long. Her name. I said, is a piece of my family's history. It's not a toy for you to twist." "Oh, come on," Emma snapped. "No one even knows that woman." "I do," I said quietly, "and that's enough." I walked over to where my daughter lay sleeping in her bassinet. I scooped her up gently, resting her soft head against my shoulder. I turned to face them all. My daughter will grow up in a home where her name is respected, where she is respected. "You're being dramatic," my mother muttered. "It's not that serious." "No," I said. "What's dramatic is thinking you get to name someone else's child. What's dramatic is turning every moment of this pregnancy into a game you can win." Daniel looked up. "Margaret, just take a breath." "No." I shook my head. "You all had your chances, over and over, and every time I let it go, thinking, maybe you'd see me, respect me, but you never did. Not once." I looked straight at my mother. "When Emma pretended to be pregnant, you celebrated her. When she broke into my account, you stayed silent. When she mocked my daughter's name, you laughed. No one moved. No one spoke. So I did the only thing left to do. I think it's time for everyone to go." My mother blinked. "Excuse me, you heard me?" I said. "This visit is over. You are not welcome here until you can respect my boundaries and my child." Emma scoffed. "You're so sensitive. Always have been." I didn't respond, didn't scream, didn't cry. Just stood my ground with my daughter in my arms. My mother stood first, muttering about how ungrateful I was. Emma followed, clutching her purse like a prize. Daniel lingered in the doorway. "Are you sure this is what you want?" he asked. I looked at him. "No," I said. "It's what I need." When the door closed behind them, the silence was pure. I sat down on the couch, my baby nestled against me, her little fingers curling around the collar of my shirt, and for the first time in a long, long time, I exhaled. The next few days were quiet. No texts, no calls, no surprise visits. I started writing a letter to my daughter, one she'll read when she's older. I poured into it everything I felt, everything I hoped for her, that she would grow up knowing she mattered, that she would never question if her name, her story, her space was hers. I wrote about the women she came from, the strength she carries in her name, the choice I made to protect her, even when it meant standing alone. And then, an email landed in my inbox, a job opportunity, a new branch of our organization opening in Montpelier, Vermont, a small town with quiet streets and maple trees. They needed someone with experience, and they were offering a relocation package. The decision came easier than I thought it would. I said yes to the job, yes to the move, yes to Vermont. Because by then, I had already said no to chaos, to erasure, to a family that loved the idea of me, as long as I stayed small. And I wasn't small anymore. We left Seattle in early spring. My car was packed with boxes and baby things. There were 3 stuffed animals, a box of board books, and one framed photo of my great-grandmother, the woman whose name my daughter now carries. Her name, the one I never said out loud to anyone until the day she arrived. I whispered it to her in the hospital. Just after she was placed in my arms, she had a head full of dark hair and the smallest, most perfect nose I'd ever seen. I told her then, "You are named after strength, after women who held up the world in quiet, stubborn ways." She blinked up at me, as if she already knew. We arrived in Montpelier just as the snow was melting. The town was small, cozy, filled with brick shops and neighbors who waved from porches. There was a farmer's market on the green every Saturday, a used bookstore with a children's corner that smelled like paper and hope, and the house they found for me, a modest 2-bedroom with white shutters and a lilac bush in the front yard. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. I started fresh. New job, new rhythm, new air. I walked my daughter in a stroller down winding sidewalks. I learned the names of the shopkeepers. I introduced myself at the tiny library's story hour. Nobody here cared about Emma, or who got what moment, or what name was cuter or trendier. They just saw me, a new mother, doing her best. And that was enough. I kept writing letters to my daughter. They filled a small box I kept in the top drawer of my nightstand. One for the day she first walks. One for her first heartbreak. One for when she starts asking questions about family. Because one day, she will. And when that day comes, I'll tell her the truth. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. I'll tell her that sometimes. Love doesn't come from the people you expect. That sometimes it's okay to choose peace over proximity. I'll tell her she was born into a line of women who didn't back down when it mattered, and that she is never required to shrink to make others feel big. A month after we settled in, I got a message. It was from Daniel. I heard you moved. I hope you're okay. I miss you. I stared at the screen for a long time, and then I put the phone down because I wasn't ready, and because missing someone doesn't always mean they belong in your life. Some nights, I sit on the front porch with my baby asleep against my chest. I watch the sun dip behind the hills. I listen to the hush of maple leaves, and I feel whole. Not fixed, not perfect, but whole. They never called again. Not my mother, not Emma, not even to ask how we were doing. And that silence, that was their answer. But here's mine. I named my daughter after a woman who once crossed this country during the hardest time in our nation's history with no husband, no money, just grit and a quiet prayer. And now, I've done the same. I've carried my child into a new place, away from noise, toward light. Her eyes are wide. Her laugh is strong. She grabs at the world like she already knows it's hers. And sometimes, when she looks at me, I swear I see all the women before me standing behind her. No one gets to rewrite her name. No one gets to rewrite mine.